Let's talk about the Hyphen Siphon on this episode of Pushback.
Go, 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 Jonny, go, 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 Jonny, go, 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 Jonny, go, go.
If you're concerned about the direction our culture is heading, then maybe it's time to push back.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Pushback. I'm Dr. Jonny coming to you again this week, although very late, and I apologize for that. Sometimes life happens, and that has definitely been the case over this past week. We had a few family health issues, which we took care of, and everything is fine. But I'm also pleased to report that I'm a grandpa again. We have a beautiful baby granddaughter, Nova Charlotte Beard, and my daughter delivered just a few days ago, and that has been rapturing our attention in that regard. And so also thrown in a few work shifts and some ministry trips, even all the way to Michigan, and we've been speaking there. It's been kind of a whirlwind. And so this is kind of a chance for me to finally sit down and get caught up. So I'm going to be releasing a podcast today, and then probably tomorrow again, and that'll kind of get me back on speed. I haven't missed a podcast in 5 years of doing this, and I'm not about to do that now, but I'm close. I was close. So here I am. This podcast is entitled The Hyphen Siphon. And I want to explain, as I'm leaning into this realm of politics, and how this affects not only us and our culture, but our children, as we think about generational mindsets, and how important it is that we think in a generational mindset manner. It's so significant for us. And I believe it's a universal language because we all want what's best for our children. And so as I'm continuing this series, sort of subtitled, We're Killing Our Kids, I titled it that way because I want to get the attention of you, our listeners, about the importance, about the gravity of the decisions that we make every day and the realms of influence that influence us and our children. It's so important that we have our eyes open, that we're able to talk about this. And so I'm coming to the conclusion or to the ending of this political sphere because politics affect our children. And I believe that the policies of politics, the political spirit that I've been talking about over the last 3 months actually kills our kids. The data has shown that our kids are becoming more despondent, more depressed, more anxious. Why is that? Not just all because of politicians, but because of some policies that are coming down from a liberal, progressive mindset that actually, I believe, is serving to harm our kids. And I hopefully have been proving that over the previous weeks. I want to dive a little bit deeper into this political realm that you'll be seeing a lot over the last couple of weeks of this election cycle. What I call identity politics. I'm not the only one that calls it that. It's entitled Identity Politics. Identity politics is a tendency for people of a particular religion, race, social background, etc., to form exclusive political alliances, moving away from traditional broad-based party politics. We have been seeing identity politics in unprecedented ways, and it flabbergasts me. I'm stunned by the willingness and the brazenness of political leaders on both sides of the aisle to talk about the hyphenated Americana in which we live in. Let me explain. It's interesting when it talks about to form exclusive political alliances. The word exclusive means to exclude. That we are forming little groups of people all identified by various hyphens in our society. The hyphen is to create division among the people, and the political spirit is now manifesting that more than ever. In fact, they seem to be doubling down on it. Despite racial and societal tension that we see in unprecedented ways, politicians are doubling down on identity politics. And I believe, or the danger of what I believe, is that we become numb to it. And we participate in it kind of unknowingly on both sides of the problem. I've talked extensively about race and racism, and I believe that science and the Bible proves that there actually are no races. Please go back and listen to my previous podcast. I won't have time to recap that. But when we talk about people of color, you'd be amazed at how many times politicians use the term people of color. What colors are they talking about? Black and white and yellow and red? That's the colors they're referring to. But this might shock you. We are all actually just different shades of brown. And our genetics show that there is only one race, the human race. But don't tell that to the politicians. The politicians have divided us very succinctly based on our nationality, on our race, and our skin color. And they get data and information about the suburban Hispanics, about the inner city Black community. And you will hear this over and over and over again in polling and in the way that they approach them and even speak to the different groups, the hyphenated groups. So what group do you identify with? See, if we participate in identity politics, then we can actually be the ones responsible. I'm floored by the fact that we talk about classes. Kamala Harris says, I was born into a middle-class family. She says it over and over and over again. Why? To try to identify to the largest voting bloc that exists, the middle class. She is trying to become the champion of the middle class by saying, I'm one of you. It's called identity politics. And she keeps ringing that bell over and over and over again. Are we in medieval France? Are we part of a caste system where we talk about the upper class and the middle class? And if you make less money, guess what? You are the lower class. I mean, just think about the language of it, the expression of it, the feeling of it. I make more money than you, then I'm upper and you are lower. I mean, just think about that. And yet we throw those words around so haphazardly all the time. How is that possible? Well, we do it because we become numb to it. I think I did this on a previous podcast, but I broke myself down into the categories that the world would probably want to put me into. And I think I came up with 23 hyphens. Do you want to hear all the hyphens that I am? I am a 50 to 60-year-old Generation X male, white, Caucasian, European descent, English-speaking, socially conservative, politically libertarian, fiscally conservative, I'm a capitalist, pro-life, Protestant, evangelical, charismatic, Christian, heterosexual, type A personality, mixed left and right-brained, introvert, college-educated, rural voter, upper middle class. That's me. Apparently that's my identity. In 1915, Teddy Roosevelt warned us of this. I just want to read you a few paragraphs. Teddy Roosevelt wrote, "There is no room in this country for hyphenated Americanism. When I refer to hyphenated Americans, I do not refer to naturalized Americans. Some of the very best Americans I've ever known were naturalized Americans, Americans born abroad. But a hyphenated American is not an American at all. This is just as true of the man who puts native before the hyphen as the man who puts German or Irish or English or French before the hyphen. Americanism is a matter of the spirit and of the soul. Our allegiance must be purely to the United States. We must unsparingly condemn any man who holds any other allegiance. But if he is heartily and singly loyal to this republic, then no matter where he is born, he is just as good an American as anyone else. The one absolutely certain way of bringing this nation to ruin, of preventing all possibility of its continuing to be a nation at all, would be to permit it to become a tangle of squabbling nationalities. An intricate knot of German Americans, Irish Americans, English Americans, French Americans, Scandinavian Americans, or Italian Americans, each preserving its separate nationality, each at heart feeling more sympathy with Europeans of that nationality than with the other citizens of the American Republic. The men who do not become Americans and nothing else are hyphenated Americans. All of us, no matter from what land our parents came, no matter in what way we may severely worship our Creator, must stand shoulder to shoulder in a united America for the elimination of race and religious prejudice. We must stand for a reign of equal justice of both big and small. Beautifully written. I think he meant to say America for the elimination of race prejudice and religious prejudice, but I actually like the way that he wrote it. For the elimination of race and religious prejudice. I think that's the goal. I think that's the target. I grew up on something called Schoolhouse Rock. Maybe those of you who are old enough like me remember those cartoons that used to come out and educate us. But they had one called The Melting Pot. Do you remember that? And it was a very patriotic view of what the American culture was like. The melting pot theory holds that, like metals melted together at great heat, the melting together of several cultures will produce a new compound, one that has great strength and other combined advantages. The definition of a melting pot is a place where different people or different cultures all come together and begin to merge and mix. America is an example of a melting pot where immigrants and people from all over the world visit and live and share thoughts and ideas to create one big new culture. Now I'm talking about legal immigration, another whole conversation. I just released a podcast on that and the dangers of illegal immigration to our culture from before. At colleges and universities, though, in reality, the metaphor of a melting pot is no longer useful. Instead, it's described more closely as a salad bowl. We are all together in one big bowl, but we all have distinct cultures. And the salad bowl then perpetuates the hyphen. Instead of salad, it's called a lettuce, cheese, dressing, croutons, tomato, cucumbers, bacon bowl. It's a lot of hyphens. Lettuce hyphen, cheese hyphen, dressing hyphen, croutons hyphen, tomato hyphen, cucumber hyphen, bacon hyphen, bowl. That's what we've created. And the problem with that is that you can take someone like me and say, I like the bacon the best. I think the bacon is the biggest contributor to the lettuce, cheese, dressing, crouton, tomato, cucumber, bacon bowl. And because of that, I'm not a big fan of the tomatoes, and so the division continues. Or the lettuce is the main component, the lettuce is the middle class, and so we need to give all attention to the lettuce. And I'm sorry, croutons, you're just going to have to wait your turn. But this is what we do. We identify and we hyphenate everything and we put people into categories, and the politicians love it because they are voting blocks, and they can turn and they can pivot to each voting block and along stereotypical lines try to appeal to you in a political spirit to try to obtain your vote. See, salads just coexist, where melting pots are additive, where we receive strength from each other. See, we are not all the same, or we are not created to become cookie cutouts, just clones of each other, shaped to be like each other. That's a Marxist mindset. That term has come up recently as well, isn't it? It's actually quite the opposite. We actually take what makes us unique and special and we throw it into a pot and we call it Americans. And we do what's best for all Americans. There's actually a heart behind that. There's a Christian heart behind the understanding that when I look at my fellow Americans, I care for them and I take care of them and I love them and I'm generous to them and I'm compassionate to them. But what the political spirit actually does is it has us resist them. It has us look for our own special interests. It has us hunker down into our own hyphenated categories so that all we do is take care of ourselves in our best interest. And that is a mindset shift that needs to take place in our culture to create health, vibrancy, sustainability. That's what we're after. A culture where we celebrate each other, where we add strength to strength, where we find power in our diversity, rather than self-serving anger and division. The politicians might want that, but we should not want that. How do we lose the hyphens? We do it by demanding that the politicians stop categorizing and pitting us against one another. I believe we can do that. I believe that we get to do that in about 2 months. When we go to the polls and we vote on behalf of what we believe, on behalf of the policies that we care about. Why do politicians do this? They do this because it works. They like to pit us against each other. We have this place of justice. We have this place of identity and belonging. Why do kids in the inner city join gangs? Because they want to belong to something, even though it's destructive, even though it's not productive. They join it anyway because they desire and they long to belong to something. We need a mindset change, and we need to look for politicians that champion Americanism. Champion Americanism, where we are together and we care about what we do. So let's go back to our children. Our children are being born into a hyphenated world, and we have the power to push back. My daughter just asked me to fill out her high school or her middle school physical form for her athletics. Being a doctor comes in very handy sometimes. And I was able to fill out her form. But of course, some of the first questions that pop up on top of the form is, what was your gender assigned at birth, comma, and what is the gender that you identify with? This is on top of the form in rural Minnesota. And I'm reading this, rolling my eyes and saying, are we just becoming numb to this? We've removed all rationality from the processes, and we've hyphenated everyone so that even their gender is a complicated multi-line question on a physical form. And the reality is, as hard as it is to hear this, what identity, gender she identifies with has nothing to do with her physical fitness to play sports. At least I thought that was true. See, we're born male or we're born female, we're born different shades of brown, and the Lord sees us as all precious and equal in His sight. He's powerful that way. He is the one that sees us as loved and cared for, not in different boxes or categories. He doesn't operate that way. He doesn't see us as Latino or German or black or white. He doesn't see us that way. He sees us as loved children. And when we connect with Him, it's where we receive our identity. Who am I? Am I those, 23 hyphens? No, I'm a loved son of the Most High God. That's who I am. That's my identity. I'm also an American, and I think I'm a male, I'm married, I have children. I don't need to go much farther than that, just a few hyphens maybe. But the most important is that I'm a son of the Most High God, and he loves me as his kid. And I find my identity in that, and that's the most important thing. But I also pivot towards this country in whom he loves. And I don't see factions and classes and divisions and hyphens. I see fellow human beings who are also loved and created in the image of God. And that's what our country was founded on, the compassion and love of God. And it's the trust that we have, in God we trust, is the motto under which we live and move and have our being. See, we can actually begin the dialogue, and are the ones that get to change the conversation about how we are positioned in this world and how we care for one another. And I also believe that when we vote and we take the democracy of what we've been given and the freedoms in which we have seriously, then we actually get to move and impact this world. Because politicians will follow whatever 51% of the people do and care about. And so we cannot become complacent, and we cannot become numb to what is happening. And hopefully this podcast opened your eyes about identity politics and the craftiness and the sinister plan that's behind the dividing and division of who we are. A house divided cannot stand. Politicians know that, and they're trying to chunk us up. They're trying to siphon us out. This is why it's the Hyphen Siphon. Rather than one big melting pot, they're siphoning out different categories of people. Where they're isolating us, they're actually pitting us against each other because it's to their benefit to maintain control and power. Our eyes are opened, and I believe that we get to do something about it, not only by voting, but participating in the political process of this world. If we don't do it, who will? Will you join me as we go together now to set and shape the culture?